All right, continuing here. So we have our icon there, button, looking good. Now we want to add the previous button to the left of the next one. How do we do that? Well, we can come down here, outside, of course, of our linear layout, which is this area here. We can come down here and say image button as such, wrap content, and when we do that, you see we have a problem here. Before we even add anything, notice it's putting itself at the bottom. Well, we want this to be to the left. How do we do that? Well, we can go ahead and add all of this. Well, we can go ahead and actually create another linear layout here. I'm going to say linear layout as such, and wrap content as such. Yes, there we go. And I'm going to take these buttons here, both of them. I'm going to move them and put inside X. I'm going to put them inside there. All right. Very good. So now you can see we have this button to the right there. So the first thing, obviously, the order really matters. So I'm going to change the order in which we are writing our buttons. I'm going to put this first there. So now you can see it's going to be there exactly where we want it to be. So I'm going to give it an ID. Of course, I'm going to say prev button as such. Let's go ahead and give it a source. In this case, we want the previous, and we don't have previous, I don't think. Let's see, drawable, baseline, navigate, what? Okay. In this case here, of course, we have to add the previous button here that we got earlier. So back to our files that we downloaded, double click this one. So we have the same thing here. This is navigate item before, right? And this is the other version as well. So the first one, let's come down here. This is lower resolution. Put inside there. Go to say OK. Should all be there. Okay. So the same thing with the other one. Let's put inside of the 24. And okay, that's great. So we have access to that now. Close this down. Okay, so for our source, I can come down now and say drawable. And I can say navigate before like that. And you can see there it is, the before. Very good. Save this and see how that will look. And voila, we have these two buttons now. So of course it doesn't do anything yet because we haven't done anything, but the next still works. Everything is working perfectly. All right, that's great. So now that I have this button, it's time to do the coding part, right? Because part of the challenge was also to be able to get this button to do something, which in this case is to go backwards in our questions. All right, you should be able to do that. Let's get rid of all of these things that we don't need to see anymore. Let's go to main activity. Well, first things first. Yes, you guessed it. I'm going to go ahead and say private. It's going to be image button again. I'm going to say prev button as such. Come down here. I'm going to just go ahead and say prev button. Find by ID, r.id.prev button. There we go. We've done this a few times now. And before I forget, I need to make sure that I register it. That's set. Oops. That's set on click. Pass this because we already have this contract here with our on-click listener interface, which means we can come to our on-click override method and create another clause here. So I'm going to say break and say case r.id.previous button. In this case here, what I want to do? Well, I'm going to say current question index. What do you think we're going to do? We're going to say it's equal to the same thing we did before. So current index, instead of plus, I'm going to say -1. And of course, do the same thing like we did before, question bank.length. Just like that. And I'm going to say update question. Look at this. How fun is this? Because we abstract out these update question items here, which just says question, and we're setting the actual question in our text view. All we have to do is just call it instead of having to repeat this code here, right? The difference here should be just in the minus because we're going the other way around. So let's save it and see if this works. If we haven't made any mistakes here. Oh boy. Let's see what the problem might be. Well, we have that index problem again happening because we're going back to index -1, which doesn't exist. Well, the problem that's happening here, it's very apparent because we said that we are subtracting 1, but when we have 0 and we subtract 1, that's going to be minus 1. That is the problem. So we don't have an index that is -1 because that is out of range, if you will. So let's be very naive and see if we can get rid of this like that. Save and see if that's going to help us at all. Okay, let's do. Okay. It seems to help us, but then at some point it just stops. Nothing really happens here. Well, it turns out the way it was like this, it works, but except we have to be strategic here. We have to make sure that the current index is not 0 or is greater than 0 in that sense, so that this actually works. So when we are at 0 index, meaning on the first question, we don't want it to go back because that is the beginning of everything, right? So to simplify this, we can go ahead and say something like if, okay, current index there is greater than 0, then this is when we're going to be able to get all of this and get it to run. That's it. Okay, so let's see if this is going to help us. Applied, let's go. See, nothing's happening because there's nothing previous, but I'm going to go a little bit forward and go back. You can go back until we get to 0, okay? All right, there we go. So now you have it, folks. We're able to get our application here, our quiz, a little bit of a makeover. So we can go backwards, we can go forward, and we can make sure if it's true or false. So everything is working as intended. So congratulations for taking the time and do this challenge here. And I hope you learned something. And again, keep improving this application and share what you do with all of us so that we can congratulate you and pat in your back and make you the king or the queen, okay, of Android development. We will get back to this application here because there's a few things we need to do, but at least now you have a full-fledged quiz app that you can show to your friends and make your mom and dad and uncles and everybody else you know, your friends. Very proud of you. Congratulations. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.